Hello, everyone, and welcome to the midweek program at the J.C. Raulston Arboretum. My name is Blake, and I'm the education assistant here at the Arboretum. And today we are on the gathering lawn because there is a cercis behind us, a redbud of sorts. We have Denny Werner, who may or may not have, well, he was. He bred the tree. He's the mother of the tree. He gave birth to it, mostly
Yeah.
Figuratively, not so much literally.
Exactly.
But we are excited to have Denny here on our program today. We've got Dennis Carey, not Denny Carey, but Dennis Carey, our curator, here to have a nice conversation with Denny about plant breeding and plants and wherever their hearts may take them. So it should be a great program. Those of you joining us on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to our channel, and feel free to leave a comment down below. And with the announcements out of the way, I will pass things over to Dennis to have a nice little garden conversation with Denny.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I am here today with Dr. Dennis Werner, Denny to his friends, who is a retired professor from North Carolina State University. One of my former professors back when I was an undergrad, back in 2002 era. But he's here today to talk about his plant breeding efforts, the stuff that he did while he was a professor. He is also one of the former directors of the J.C. Raulston Arboretum. Those of you who are newer have only ever known Mark Wethington, but before him was Ted Bilderback, and before Ted was Denny Werner, and before Denny Werner was Bob Lyons, and before Bob Lyons was J.C. Raulston. So he's there in the early part. Denny Werner is best known probably for, I don't know, are you better known for your buddleias or your redbuds at this point?
I think probably the redbuds, maybe because they're more recent.
They are more recent, yeah. When I was his student, it was the buddleias, were the butterfly bushes, were the hot plant that he was breeding. He had bred a whole line of dwarfs, which was kind of a breakthrough, in all kinds of different colors, including a near red and a really hot pink that were kind of brand new. Color breakthroughs at the time. They were also all nearly sterile, which you want in a butterfly bush because they can be kind of weedy at times, right?
Yes, correct.
After I was his student, he had transitioned over to redbuds, and that's what I'm hoping we get to talk about today. Now, Dr. Werner was a college student in the 70s. That must have been a pretty exciting time to be a college student. And Penn State and University of Michigan. Michigan State.
Yeah.
And then came to NC State and spent his entire career here. He's released a lot of plants over the years. He started off in peaches, and he did a handful of the edible peach cultivars and then a handful of ornamental peaches. And actually you have a recent peach cultivar too, so you're still on that a little bit. Almost a dozen butterfly bush releases, and then has had more than a dozen redbud releases. You've had a couple of home runs along the way.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about those hopefully. And you've dabbled a little bit in two other areas, sweet gum and Stokes aster.
Correct. Yes.
And if we have time, we might talk a little bit about that as well.
Sure.
I gave Blake a hyperlink with all of the cultivars that Dr. Werner has ever bred. And if you go into that page, you click it, it actually opens up a very detailed description about each cultivar. So it's very interesting reading if that's the kind of reading you're interested in. I guess we can start with redbuds if you want.
That'd be fine, sure.
So tell us about redbuds. Tell us about your reading.
Well, I started breeding redbuds in the late 1990s. Actually, one of the probably the main catalyst for starting redbud work was the collection here at the Arboretum, and JC's encouragement earlier on in the 90s to consider breeding redbuds. So at that time, the Arboretum probably had one of the best collections of redbuds in the country. And looking at the current cultivar situation in redbuds, almost all of the existing cultivars at that time, i.e. mid to late 90s, had originated from just random finds, so to speak, and people finding things in the woods, or nurserymen finding interesting types in their rootstock rows.
Okay.
And I saw there was a lot of opportunity for some controlled breeding in redbuds to develop some new forms. So that really all started right here at this garden.
Sure, it's a great, it's a real popular landscape plant because it is a smallish tree. It's great perfect size for gardens, and a nice color in the spring, and all that.
And it's native.
And it's a native.
At least the eastern redbud is native. There are Asian species of redbuds that are less popular, but it's a great plant for people who enjoy gardening with native plants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you worked pretty much entirely with the native species,
Correct.
and not with any of the others.
That is correct. Yeah, I worked mainly with the eastern redbud, canadensis, and the Texensis form of redbud, which is native to southern Oklahoma down into Texas and northern Mexico, which we call botanical variety Texensis.
Sure. Yeah. And it's a little bit different though than the normal one, right? It's
a little bit different than straight canadensis in that it has glossy leaves, smaller leaves. It's engineered for drought tolerance in those landscapes of central and west Texas and northern Mexico, where
a lot of wind, a lot of heat.
A lot of wind, a lot of heat, and maybe 10 to 15 inches of rainfall a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it brings in some good genes actually into the program.
Yeah. Now, do they all have the darker flowers, or is it just like Traveler?
Well, Texensis in general has darker flowers, a more intense flower color than typical eastern redbud. Yeah. Which makes it quite attractive. I'm sure many of your listeners have probably seen the cultivar Oklahoma growing along the roadways here in Raleigh landscapes. It's that real intense, late flowering cultivar of redbud. I'm
most familiar with your redbud breeding from one of your more recent home runs, and I think maybe a lot of people have heard about Flamethrower.
Correct.
And that's just this amazing breakthrough, really. Can you tell us a little bit about how you bred it and what it is, what makes it so special? Yeah,
I'd be happy to. And I will say that when you're involved in plant breeding, you hit some home runs, but you have a certain number of singles and doubles too.
Sure.
And sometimes you get thrown out at first. You never know.
Yeah.
That's just the way it goes. But Flamethrower, that was released about 4, maybe 5 years ago. It actually was a 2016 selection from a 2011 hybridization. So it took about maybe 8, 9 years to develop that. And Flamethrower, the goal of developing Flamethrower is we wanted to see what the appearance of a tree would be if it contained both the gold leaf gene and the purple leaf gene, and to see how the co-expression of those two genes interacted. And what I expected was perhaps what we see in an orchid in terms of flower color, where they cross purple orchids and gold flowered orchids, is they typically come up with a bronze pigmentation in the flower. But what surprised us is when we grew out those first second generation plants, what we call the F2s, we recovered trees that were expressing both the gold and the purple leaf gene. But what was interesting is as they emerged as seedlings, the cotyledons were gold, the first true leaf was gold, and the second leaf was purple. So we started to get this interesting expression of, during development, of some leaves were purple, some leaves were gold, some leaves were actually red as they first emerge. You get that red that quickly changes to purple. So you got this, if you will, a kaleidoscope of colors on the tree, particularly when it's growing quickly and putting out a flush of new growth in April, May, and June. It's not quite as dramatic as the season progresses and the heat.
That's kind of common.
That's kind of common with many with pigmented leaf plants. Yeah. So we thought, wow, this is really interesting, and this is quite novel. And so did the gardening public, which we were happy to see. So that was quite a breakthrough. We were really excited to develop something like that, which again was very novel and unique.
And that was an award winner for you too, over RHS.
At the Royal Horticultural Society. We won the award for the best new plant in the world. So that's sort of like It's like getting a Grammy. You know?
Yeah.
If you can't sing, at least you can grow new plants.
Yeah, yeah. But you would have gotten that home run without the singles and doubles.
Right, yeah.
Because you were working with gold-leafed varieties and purple-leafed varieties also, I assume, which were yours as well.
Yeah, well, the purple leaf variety, actually, when I started breeding redbuds in '99, there was a purple leaf variety in existence called forest pansy, which is still widely grown today. And forest pansy traces back to 1947. It was found as a chance seedling in a nursery in Tennessee. So that existed, but you have to remember in 1998-99 when I started, there were no gold leaf redbuds because Hearts of Gold and Rising Sun were not yet discovered.
Okay.
There was only one variegated form of redbud, Silver Cloud.
Yeah.
There was only one weeping form of redbud called Cuffy. So the genetic variation was somewhat limited when I started in the 90s and became more available as people started finding these rare plants in the woods. So that made the cross to develop flamethrower possible because I couldn't have done that in '99. The genetic variation wasn't there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see what happens in the future.
Yeah.
What other kind of neat ones they find.
Well, flamethrower has some flaws, as all new plants do. So the next goal is to try to improve it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's all kinds of ways to perhaps reduce the stature, improve the growth habit, perhaps integrate some texensis into the background to put that color combination into a glossy leaf background.
That'd be nice.
The more varieties that are developed and discovered, the more opportunities there are to develop new things. That becomes an infinite number of combinations that you can develop.
And that's what you did a lot of, is taking these, this color from here and that dwarf habit from there and that weeping habit from there and putting them together.
Correct.
And that's how you get a lot of your cool releases.
That's how you get a lot of the new variation. Now, of course, it takes 10 years to do that, but I'm a patient person.
Sure, yeah, you have to be. And luckily, it's not one of the even longer generation plants. You know?
Yeah, we're fortunate in that if you push a red bud, you can get some flowers by year 3.
Yeah. And
start the crossing. So you're working generally on 3 or 4 year cycles, and the way we have to typically manage them is we make a hybridization between 2 parents. We develop that F1 seedling. We grow that tree up for 3 or 4 years, and then we intermate that with other F1s, and we get F2 seed. F2 being the second generation.
The grandchild.
The grandchildren, yes.
And remind everyone what happens in the F1 and what happens in the F2.
Yeah. Well, most of the traits we're dealing with are recessive. So if you cross a purple leaf and a gold leaf redbud with any other type of redbud, the gold and the purple are recessive and they don't show up in the first generation. They disappear.
So the F1s are all green.
So the F1s are all green. They're non-weeping. They look like any other garden variety redbud you'd see growing along the roadside in the spring.
But they still have the alleles.
They still have the alleles. They have those recessive genes. So we go to the F2 generation where these recessive traits begin to segregate out into these different combinations.
And appear once again. And then the combinations, that's when the combinations appears in
That's
the F2.
when the combinations appear. So if we're looking for a combination of 3 recessive genes, it's 1/2 by 1/2 by 1/2, you know?
Yeah.
So we just have to grow out big numbers to pick up those interesting recombinants. But that's the fun part, is growing out thousands of F2 seedlings and looking for that one special tree, and you can say to yourself, that's a grand slam, or that's a double, whatever.
Yeah. So each year you have a field where you're doing all this breeding work, and each year part of your field goes to how many thousand seedlings?
Correct, yeah.
And so you have every year you have a couple of rows, or however many rows, of several thousand, a block, let's say. Several thousand seedlings that you're evaluating, and then by year, whatever, 5 or 8 or whatever.
Yeah, depending upon the traits that we're selecting for, they can be relatively quickly selected or taking a little bit more time. Yeah.
And some of your more recent releases are super dwarfs, right?
Yeah, And this has a North Carolina connection to it. Actually, North Carolina has played a rather large role in the introduction of redbud cultivars. We have developed a series of new dwarfs, or what I call compact series of redbuds, because even compact trees get big. They just get big slower.
Yeah.
So there was a gentleman up in the mountains of North Carolina who discovered a compact variety that had small heart-shaped leaves, and he called it Ace of Hearts. And it's a relatively popular cultivar in the trade, perhaps about 30 to 40% the height of a typical canadensis. I had a visitor from England who was promoting redbuds in Europe, and his propagator, the propagator of many of the redbud trees in Europe, is actually an Israeli nurseryman. And they visited, about 2004, 2005. And they said to me, you know, what we could really use in Europe is a series of compact cultivars of different colors.
Smaller backyards?
Smaller backyards, just smaller trees, is what they wanted. So at that time, I began to make crosses to that end. And just recently now, we have begun to release some of those cultivars. And again, it's taken 14 years, something like that.
And that's the Garden Gems series.
That's the
right?
Garden Gems series. So there's Garden Gems Emerald, which is the green leaf. There's Garden Gems Amethyst, which is the purple leaf. There's Garden Gems Amethyst Falls, which is the purple leaf weeper. And there's a gold we have in the program to be released. We haven't given that a name yet.
Oh, okay.
Okay. That's probably 1 or 2 years out. And we have a really interesting white flowered Texensis form that has the compact gene, which looks beautiful. Beautiful in a pot.
Sure.
Wonderful pot plant.
Yeah.
So it's taken 15 years, but when I talk to my European counterpart, I say, you asked for it, you got it.
Here it is, 15 short years later.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of par for the course, though.
Yeah, but it was fun. My philosophy in breeding plants is I always try to develop something new and novel and unique. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I don't want to come up with something that's just a little tweak on an existing variety. I like to develop something that hopefully will have an impact in the industry and provide a new niche or a new alternative for growers.
Sure, and each one of these new combinations scratches somebody's itch, right? You know, somebody really's got to have that dwarf, and someone's really got to have that that new gold leaf weeper or whatever, whatever the new,
Exactly. That's what keeps the industry rolling.
Yeah.
It's new. Because if I release a new redbud, in 2 years, people will ask me, "Got anything new?"
Of course, that's all everyone wants to know. What's next?
The half-life of people's memory on plants is pretty short.
Thanks for what you did, but what are you going to do for me?
What are you going to do for me now?
So, you're doing some of this work. You're retired, and you used to do this work, down in Castle Hayne, which is down east, right?
Actually, I did it at the Sandhills Research Station, which is down in Montgomery County, North Carolina. It's about 75 miles southwest of campus.
Southwest, okay.
And that's, I guess the reason I started working there is that's where I did all my peach breeding, because Montgomery and Moore County was somewhat the epicenter of the peach industry.
Okay.
When I came here, not so much anymore, but it was just a natural for me to continue my ornamental breeding work at that station because I had a great relationship with the station staff, the superintendent.
And you had allotted space,
and I had as much space as I needed.
Scrape for some space, but you're doing some work in your backyard now that you're retired, right?
Yeah, I'm retired, and I'm continuing to do a little backyard breeding, as they say.
Yeah.
And I have I continue to make crosses using potted redbud plants, potted parents of the cultivars I wish to use. I collect the first generation seed. I grow out the F1s in my garden to about 6 foot height after 1 year. And then I have a cooperator in Tennessee. I take the trees out to a grower in Tennessee who grows them on his property, and he grows them up until we get the F2 generation, and then we start the cycle of selection.
Okay.
So I don't have the space in my backyard. He has
not for thousands.
Not for thousands. Yeah. He has acres of plants, so it works out, or acres of space.
Sure.
So it works out very well, and it's always fun to cooperate with a person in the industry.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most rewarding parts of my job as a plant breeder, is the ability to interact with the nursery industry and give them new plants.
Well, sure, and these nurserymen are doing great propagating your plant and helping. You're helping the green industry out, which is the mission here at the Arboretum.
Yeah, I think so. I have some cooperators who allow me to grow plants on their property here in Wake County.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
And they're nurserymen who benefit from being able to sell my trees, so it works out very well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, you can use my backyard if you want. It's a little small, but
I don't know. I'd worry about security there in your backyard. I don't know.
Yeah, my dog might chew it up. Or something.
That's right. You got a new dog. We have to be careful.
Yeah. Interesting traits in the Eastern redbud are the leaves color, variegated or yellow or purple, or if it's the Texensis type, shiny. Habit, which can be big, weeping, dwarf weeping. Any interesting traits in flowers or fruit that you've ever come across or worked with?
Flower color is interesting. I haven't focused too much on flower color. I've been relatively comfortable with just developing the typical light purple or the medium purple that you find in wild type redbud. One variety that always interested me was Appalachian red. Because of that near red flower color, particularly as the buds emerge in the spring. It does have a slight purple contamination, but it really is a quite interesting variety. And that was found in the Appalachian Mountains in western Maryland. It was the discovery of Appalachian red. So I've made crosses with Appalachian red. We crossed it with Oklahoma. We wanted to see if we could take the enhanced flower color from Oklahoma redbud, a Texensis, and cross it with Canadensis, Appalachian red, and could we exploit the color intensity in both cultivars and recombine that, and even get something that's above that.
More dark or intense or whatever you can get? That'd be awesome.
It didn't work.
Bummer.
but what we did get is we have some very nice forms of Appalachian red that have Texensis character and much more improved branch habit. And my successor, Dr. Chen, is working on that project right now and has made some really interesting selections. So he's more or less picking up the ball with that
he
project.
took over the main...
He took over the main redbud breeding program.
Now there is another kind of newish trait on the market. Hoping you can tell us a little bit about it. The zigzag trait.
Oh yeah, zigzag is a new redbud that was just recently released this year, or perhaps last year. It's new to the trade, relatively new. And for those of you who are familiar with redbud, you probably know that redbud has a little bit of a zigzag character on the new growth, just slight, but there's a cultivar called Zigzag that has a very pronounced zigzag growth habit.
And it really
zigs and it zags. Each node goes in a slightly different direction. It was found as a chance seedling up in the Northeast somewhere. And of course, when I see a trait like that, I immediately think, what can we do to improve that? Or not improve it, but to put it into different combinations. And zigzag has a normal architecture on the tree. It's a large growing redbud. And as the branches age and as they get higher, you don't quite see the zigzag character as much as you do in a young plant. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I thought, well, let's see if we can incorporate the zigzag character into a weeping background, because if you have those, weeping with those 6-foot branches hanging down, and you can do some renewal pruning on a weeping redbud where you generate new flushes of growth every year, I thought that would be a cool combination. So I don't know how that's going to turn out yet because I'm not into the F2s. But we're close.
So in progress, so stay tuned, everyone.
Yeah, that's just a work in progress. I only started venturing out on my own in my quote backyard breeding in year 2000. That was the COVID year, if you recall.
2019.
2019, 2020.
Yeah.
When we were restricted into how much we could get into the greenhouses to work.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, if I can't work in the greenhouse, I'm going to work at home.
Yeah.
So I just started making crosses in my backyard, and one thing's led to the other. So it's working out quite well. It's hard to believe this is the 5th year of striking out on my own.
Are there any other interesting traits that you can tease that you're working on? Or
Let's see. Well, I've always been interested in, those of you who visit the Arboretum are probably familiar with the Texensis weeping form called Traveler. And Traveler is the weeping form of Texas redbud, excuse me, which was found in central to West Texas. I don't know exactly where. But Traveler has a somewhat different weeping architecture than does the Canadensis weepers.
Okay.
Traveler tends to be more of a spreading weeper rather than this abrupt weeping form that you get with Canadensis. So I've always been interested in that Traveler trait, the weeping trait. The challenge is Traveler is male sterile and female sterile. So it's somewhat of a genetic dead end. And I walked through this Arboretum for the last 20 years looking at the Traveler trees. And unless someone picked a pod before me, I've never ever seen a pod on a Traveler. Until in my front yard, I had a specimen Traveler tree, and in 2010, got one pod.
One pod.
One single pod. And I thought to myself, well, it's probably empty.
Right.
Probably not going to amount to anything. So in August, when the pod dried, I picked it, opened it up, one seed.
One seed in one pod.
Looked pretty good. I had no idea what dad was because it was just an open pollination, as they say. So I scarified that seed, which means I acid treated it to breach the seed coat. I sowed it, and I came into the greenhouse on Christmas Day. It germinated. Okay. Merry Christmas to you, Denny. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
So, it was wonderful. So I nurtured that tree, and long story short, we've taken that through a couple generations of crossing, and I have the cutest little weeping Traveler tree you ever want to see.
Sure.
Okay. Still under trial, still under test. It's just a selection number.
Does it have any fertility?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It will flower next spring.
Oh, okay.
And you can bet I'm going to keep an eagle eye on that.
Sure, yeah.
Because if it does have fertility, we got gold, we got red, we got bicolor, we have a whole
we have a whole bunch of other things to put into that. That'd be really cool. Yeah, like a dwarf, but really wide.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a great patio plant.
So, that's the exciting thing about plant breeding, and I think what keeps me motivated is you develop something new, and now there's 5 or 10 more opportunities. So you can never do everything you want to do in this lifetime. So if I come back, I'll resume my breeding.
Yeah, I mean, you've just really scratched the surface because you've just worked with the Eastern redbud.
Exactly.
There's the Western species, and there's the European species, and there's a handful of Asian species, and a whole lot of other opportunities.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities. So it's been rewarding.
Yeah. Do we have any questions, Blake?
Sure. There's a fair number of questions.
All right.
Kathy wanted to know if the flowers on flamethrower are pale or a deep pink.
They're pale. They're typical purple. Yeah, pale to medium purple.
I'd like to follow up on that question. Let's say you had the dramatic foliage that you're getting from flamethrower. Is there a scenario where the flowers are just like, this isn't worth that foliage anymore?
No.
Yeah.
When you have foliage like that, even if it doesn't flower, you go with it. Okay.
Fair enough.
You know,
absolutely.
You accept the fact that, well, I wish that flower color would be better.
Mm-hmm.
But from that point where you have the flamethrower, but you wish the flowers would be better, that would be another 6 to 7 years.
Okay.
And I'm not going to sit on a flamethrower for 7 years to try and make the flowers a little bit more intense.
Sure.
You have to, even though sometimes you release something and it's not perfect, and there's no such thing as perfect, of course, but you go with it, and maybe it has a half-life of 5, 7, 8 years, and at the same time, you're working to improve it.
Brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
a beautiful way to live life generally, actually.
Yeah, it is.
So-
Really, yeah. I mean, you can sit and evaluate and hope you're going to come up with something better, and that's a losing proposition
Sure,
in the
yeah.
plant business, because when people see a plant that's unique, what do they want to do with it? They want to name it and release it.
Yeah, they
you
do.
know,
Yeah, absolutely.
that's the industry.
Bird in the hand, work
Yeah.
two in the bush.
Mhm.
Diane wants to know if these new Cercis cultivars are weedy at all.
Weedy.
Weedy.
Well, Cercis is a native taxa.
Right.
So people don't get quite as concerned about weediness if it's native as
Sure.
they do if it was non-native. You know, one of the hypocrisies of, quote, invasive plants.
Right.
I would say that my releases have variable fertility.
Okay.
If you look at Merlot here right behind us, it sets very, very few pods. So it's typically not weedy, not sterile,
Sure.
but it sets a reduced number. Flamethrower is a relatively low fruit set variety.
Yeah.
And all of the compact forms that are coming out in the Garden Gems series are very, very low fertility. There's something about that compact trait that's associated with low fertility. I mean, we have a Ace of Hearts tree over here that very, very rarely sets fruit.
No kidding.
Yeah. In fact, when I use the compacts and crosses, I always use the compact forms as males and the non-compact forms as females because they just don't set very many, very many seed.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I do want to point out that that tree behind, not the one we're sitting under, but the one directly behind Denny's head, that one's actually Traveler.
That is Traveler.
If you want an example of its spready habit, there it is right there.
Yeah.
Mary wanted to know if all of the new Cercis cultivars are available, are on display in the Arboretum here. I know we've got a handful.
We do have the Garden Gems in the Arboretum now.
Yeah.
We have a good number of them. I'm not quite sure if we have all of them, but I will say stay tuned for the next newsletter, which is going to come out in winter. I am going to do a kind of a deep dive into the collection and go over that, how, the fullness of it and where everything is and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Awesome. And Nancy had a bit of a cheeky question. She wants to know if any of these new dwarf cultivars are going to be in the plant giveaway coming up this.
Nope.
Nope.
No.
If we do that, we'd put those in a connoisseur plant program some
No
year.
kidding.
You know?
Yeah.
That would actually be a good idea if we propagate a few of those and get them in the connoisseur program.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Or our rare plant auction with our Southeastern Plant Symposium.
Yeah.
It remains to be seen if there's going to be any red buds at all. As of right now, there's not any red buds that we have in large number to put in the giveaway. But we always, last minute, the day before, we go through the greenhouses and find leftovers, onesies and twosies of this and that we already have in the garden. We don't want just to have around. So who knows how many red buds will end up being in there, but as of right now, there aren't any.
Sure. Carolyn was intrigued by your mention of acid treating the seeds. She wants to know your method behind that.
Yeah, there's red buds have a hard seed coat at maturity, and they have to be undergo a process called scarification, in contrast to stratification. Those two terms sometimes get confused. And there are two primary ways of scarifying red buds. Scarification means breaching the seed coat to allow the seed to absorb water and to have gas exchange to trigger germination. Some people use hot water. You can pour boiling water over a red bud seed. You think it would kill them, but it doesn't.
Sure enough.
You let that boiling water come down to ambient temperature, at room temperature, and that usually is enough to cause micro fissures in the seed, and it triggers germination. The other strategy is to treat the seeds for about 25 to 35 minutes with pure sulfuric acid. And that's enough to break through that seed coat to allow water exchange.
Sure.
Most of my career, I've used sulfuric acid. I've had more consistent results with that, but obviously that's something that a homeowner is not going to want to do because it's dangerous and it's difficult to get access to concentrated sulfuric acid. Last year I used the water treatment and it worked quite well. So either way I think is good, but for the homeowner, boiling water treatment is great.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't have the luxury of taking plant propagation with you, but I did take it with your successor, Liz
Gotcha.
Meyer, and that's how we did it in that class, which is boiling water.
Very good.
And we had very good success with germination there.
And that's just a more rapid way, and you get a higher germination percentage than the natural way. If you leave a seed just sitting out over winter, freeze thaw,
Yeah.
you know, all winter long, months and months of it, you get those micro fissures that the water can
Sure
get
enough.
in.
So
So
that's,
yeah, you're just speeding up what is otherwise a natural
Exactly,
process.
very much so.
I love that. Okay, Ernie had a question about, say you have a superior foliage red bud, but then you notice that it's much less drought tolerance. He wants to know if there are some red characteristics that are just a solid no. If you
Well,
get 'em.
I don't know that there's any significant variation in canadensis
Sure.
for drought tolerance, except the fact that Texensis generally is more drought tolerant because of the glossy, thicker leaf. So I don't think a lack of drought resistance would ever be a disqualifying character.
Sure.
Because if there's any differences, they're relatively subtle, and redbud is actually quite drought tolerant, even canadensis when it's established.
Yeah.
They really don't need too much attention after that first year of establishment.
Nice.
What redbuds don't like, and I see this whenever I see a redbud fail in the landscape, more often than not, I see it's planted too deeply.
Sure.
You got to keep a redbud right at the soil surface. That graft union has to be above the soil surface.
Absolutely.
That main root needs to be right around the soil surface. You need to simulate Mother Nature.
Yeah, you do.
You know, if it looks like a flagpole coming out of the ground, you're in trouble.
Yeah, you are.
It might live 1 or 2 years, but then it'll die a gruesome death.
We do have a question from the audience, our studio audience today. Someone wants to know the parentage of Ruby Falls.
Yeah, sure. Ruby Falls, that was actually released about 2006, 2007. That was one of my early releases. And that was one of my first goals, is to get that purple leaf character into a weeping background. I couldn't believe no one had ever tried that. I mean, it's a quite simple objective. It just takes time. So the parents are, the purple leaf form was forest pansy. And the reason we chose forest pansy is that it was the only purple leaf form in existence. Okay, so we had no other choice. And the weeping form was what we call covey, now known in the trade as lavender twist.
Okay.
And the reason we chose lavender twist is that there was no other weeping form besides lavender twist.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't like we were very selective in choosing the parents. We went with what we had. Okay?
Sure.
And interestingly enough, at that time, I had a potted tree of lavender twist, a big 3-year-old potted tree in a 15-gallon.
Nice.
I had a 15-gallon potted tree of Ruby Falls.
Love it.
We put them at the back of the Arboretum in the screen house. If you remember, there used to be a screen house back there. We put the trees inside of another screen enclosure.
Sure.
And we put a hive of bumblebees in there.
Okay.
And we let the bumblebees go to work.
All right.
And you know, the bumblebees work great because they work all day long. They don't take breaks. They work on Saturdays and Sundays, you know. So all we did then was harvest the fruit actually off of lavender twist. Those are the F1 seeds. And since redbud is self-incompatible, which means a lavender twist will not set self-seed, nor will a forest pansy. A redbud is like an apple.
Sure.
You need to have a Golden Delicious and another variety in your garden. To get fruit on a redbud or pods, you need to have 2 different varieties. So we had those 2 cultivars in a cage. The bumblebees did the work, and just by definition then, any seed we collected off lavender twist had to be hybrid seed.
Yeah.
And we can tell that by the fact that the first generation, there were no weepers in that first generation. So there you go. Yeah.
I do have a follow-up question from the internet. Jacqueline wanted to know how you feel about Ruby Falls.
How I feel about Ruby Falls?
How you feel about her.
I feel really good about her. You know, she's been really good to me.
No doubt.
Ruby's been very loyal. Okay?
Hasn't she, though?
Yeah, I feel real good about that. It's one of my first varieties, and I'll have to share that the person that named Ruby Falls was a 6-year-old son of a nurseryman in Tennessee. We were bouncing around ideas for, me and the nurseryman were bouncing around ideas for, what are we going to call this plant? You know, blah, 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 blah. And being from Tennessee, he thought, the young man thought, let's call it Ruby Falls, because Ruby Falls is a big tourist attraction near Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Okay.
And I like to joke when I give a talk. I show some of those pictures of see Ruby Falls now as you're heading toward Chattanooga. So I say that's my marketing department for Ruby Falls, you know. But yeah, just a really great name from a 6-year-old kid. I had to buy him an ice cream cone for that idea.
That's a good deal.
All worked out
ice
good.
cream cone for a great name.
Yeah, it's a good variety. It's been good to me.
What are some of your other top performing sales-wise cultivars?
Yeah. Well, let's see. Pink Pom-Poms is an interesting variety. Pink Pom-Poms has got steady sales. Pink Pom-Poms is a hybrid of Flame, which we have right here next to the visitor center. It's a double-flowered redbud, discovered in the wild in 1907. It's been around that long.
Whoa.
And we didn't cross Flame. Mother Nature crossed Flame with Oklahoma. And we happened to be around to see the offspring.
Oh boy.
And that cross occurred out in a nursery in Tennessee with one of my nurseryman cooperators, who happened to notice that Flame had seeds on it that year. Flame is almost absolutely, positively sterile.
Okay.
No pods. One year he walked by it, he looked at it, it was loaded with pods.
That's amazing.
Why? What happened, you know? And it happened to be growing right next to an Oklahoma Texensis tree. So he sent me the pods, and I thought, well, these aren't going to be any good. You know, they're going to be non-viable. I opened the pods, seed looked good. I sowed the seed. I said, these aren't going to come up. They came up. I had 300 F2s, or actually F1s out of that cross, because the double-flowered trait is fortunately dominant.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
So we grew out the F1s, and we had double-flowered types, and we had certain trees that had the Oklahoma flower color. And they turned out to be the flower color is almost near pink. It's a good plant, and it is absolutely sterile. I've never seen a pod on Pink Pom-Poms since I've released it.
Sure.
So that's a popular one. What else? I might be forgetting some. We have one back here. Back near the sweet gum, the gumball sweet gum is Whitewater, which is a weeping variegated white. Yeah. Which I thought would probably, I thought maybe that's going to sell 4,000 or 5,000 trees a year. It sold 400 or 500 trees a year. You know, you never can predict how it's going to resonate. With the gardening public. You know?
No kidding.
And probably have an improved weeping variegated form coming out in the next year or two.
Oh, nice.
Which will be good, because flamethrower, actually with Whitewater, the patent runs out on that probably in about 2 years. That's almost been out 20 years.
No kidding.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to take that kid out for another ice cream to get a good name for that.
Get a good name for that, exactly. So yeah, Merlot's been a great variety. So it's all been good. You know, they all have a half-life. Some of them have a longer half-life than others.
Sure.
Ruby Falls has been good. When the patent goes off Ruby Falls in 2 years, that means anybody can grow it and anybody can market it. Yeah. Which in a way means that maybe the numbers will increase.
Sure enough.
In the marketplace. Yeah. The downside of that is, since there's no royalty stream back to NC State, NC State won't recoup any funds from that release. It's really not about money. You know, to me, it's just about developing a new plant, quite frankly.
Awesome.
You know,
it's beautiful.
Any other
Sure.
questions?
Matt had a more technical question. He says, has vascular streak dieback affected your breeding program? Is it something that could be addressed through breeding efforts?
Yeah, vascular streak dieback is, as the name implies, a vascular disease, fungal disease that is infecting redbuds, as well as a number of other taxa, but redbud seems to be one of the more susceptible. It's a relatively new disease, and there's a lot we don't know about it yet in terms of its biology, its management, how prevalent it will be. Some years it has been quite bad, other years not quite so bad. the anecdotal evidence suggests that chinensis, Cercis chinensis, the Asian redbud,
Yeah.
is less susceptible to it.
Sure.
Okay. I'm to the point in my career where starting out a program to breed for vascular streak dieback disease, which is probably a 15 to 20 year project,
Yeah.
is well beyond my scope.
Gotcha.
You can think of it as maybe trying to integrate chestnut blight into the American chestnut. It's the exact same kind of problem. And how long have they been working on that?
Honestly.
30 years now.
Yeah.
Right.
30 years, I'll be 102. I'm planning on having a long life, but I don't know if I'm going to make it till then.
Sure.
But my successor, Dr. Chen, is embarking on that program because he's a young man, and he probably has 30 years ahead of him to work on that. Hopefully, in the canadensis types, we don't know if it's mainly a problem in the nursery for disease infection.
Sure, yeah.
Can we control it in the nursery or establish trees susceptible to the disease? The challenge is the disease is very difficult to work with because it cannot be cultured in a lab, in vitro.
Right.
So they can't study it.
Right.
They can't do artificial inoculations with it.
Oh, man.
They're sort of dependent upon Mother Nature infecting the tree. So
Right.
it's a challenging disease, and I don't know what the future holds. I mean, you think about when dogwood anthracnose and dogwood mildew came on the scene back in the late 80s. Everybody said it's going to be the death of dogwoods in the marketplace.
Sure, yeah.
How many millions of dogwoods are still sold?
Right.
Millions. So
Sure.
I just where redbud's going to fall out in that, I do not know.
Okay.
I'm charging ahead, hoping that the pathologists come up with something.
Sure.
If not, it could be a long problem for the species.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Marilyn wants to know, what is the best purple or red-leafed redbud that holds its color best in the summer?
Well, I will say two things.
Yeah.
The compact forms of my purple leaf releases, Amethyst Cascade and
Sure.
Amethyst,
Yeah.
the weeping and non-weeping counterpart,
Gotcha.
they have smaller leaves, and interestingly enough, they seem to retain their color better into the summer
Nice.
than do the typical large leaf,
Sure.
typical canadensis. And I don't know if that's because there's just as many, maybe there's just as many cells in a small leaf compact form.
Yeah.
It's just they're smaller.
Sure.
And because the pigment is sequestered in what we call the vacuole of the cell,
Yeah.
you have more concentration of that pigment per unit area, and they look brighter
Sure.
later.
Yeah.
So that remains to be seen. I was talking to Dennis about that today. That would be a great undergraduate project. Just look at a normal leaf redbud and a compact leaf and see how many cells, look at cell size, and that will tell you a lot about pigment retention.
No kidding.
And then number two, there is a new redbud on the market called Hearts of Fire. It's not mine.
Okay.
It came out of the same cross as Flamethrower. This is how the business goes.
In it, though.
Okay, but that one is more of a red form, and it retains its color quite well.
Interesting.
Hearts of Fire, it's more of a red rather than having the bicolor trait.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a very beautiful tree.
Sure.
Very nice. Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
There's not too many questions and there's not too much time. There is still some time. And you did say that you were playing around with sweet gums. I would like to know, what indeed do you want to get out of sweet gums?
Yeah, people ask me that question. What they typically say is, "Are you crazy? You're working with sweet gum?" You know? Okay. Well, sweet gum's a native tree.
It is.
First of all, it's a very important host plant for a number of our larger moth species.
Absolutely.
Not many people know that when they're stepping on the gumballs on the ground, but if they look up, they might see some larvae of some moths. I've always been interested in architectural mutants in both peaches, redbuds, and now sweet gum. In sweet gum, there's been a long time mutant called gumball. We call it, I think it's called a coney in the trade.
Okay.
The cultivar name is a coney, but gumball has a globose habit.
Sure.
Looks like a big giant beach ball.
Nice.
Okay. It's a novelty for sure. But what really got me interested was this columnar sweet gum that was discovered called Slender Silhouette.
Okay.
Slender Silhouette was found in a state park in south central Tennessee, right above the Alabama border.
Interesting.
And it was actually discovered by one of the nurserymen that I cooperate with out there. Slender Silhouette looks like it. The person who discovered Slender Silhouette originally was a homeowner. She described it as a telephone pole with leaves on it. Okay? And I've seen the oldest grafted tree. Okay, in Tennessee.
Yeah.
It's actually in the yard of Harold Neubauer, who's a long-term nurseryman out there. He grafted one of the very, very first plants. His is about 90 feet tall.
Oh, wow.
And about this wide.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
So I'm thinking, okay. I had a student working on sweet gum for another purpose back in 2011, undergraduate student project.
Yeah.
But as a part of that project, we decided, well, let's cross Slender Silhouette and Gumball.
Do it.
What the heck happens when you have a tree with the gene for columnar
Tell us.
and the gene for globose?
Uh-huh.
And the juvenile phase, the phase till flowering in sweet gum is 5 to 6 years. So we had to wait 5 to 6 years to get the F1, the fruit.
Yeah.
We got F2s. We grew out hundreds and hundreds of F2s. And the variation in those F2s was remarkable.
No kidding.
We got typical wild type sweet gums
Yeah.
that we threw away. Okay. We had typical columnar, slender silhouette types that we threw away.
Sure.
All right. We had reduced stature slender silhouettes that were even tighter than slender silhouette.
No kidding.
Okay. I'm very interested in those.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
We're still testing.
Absolutely.
And then we had little dwarf columnars. Okay.
No kidding.
They're about 5 years old.
Little cuties.
And they're about 3 or 4 feet tall.
That's amazing.
The only challenge with those is they don't seem to want to keep a really good central leader. They have multiple leaders.
Interesting.
And whether that will work itself out as they grow bigger, I don't know. So it was just a cross to see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But it gave us some interesting types. And then also out of that cross, just by chance, Mother Nature gave us a gift. We got a triploid. We got a type that has 3 sets of chromosomes.
Yeah.
And we're still testing that because it hasn't flowered yet.
Sure.
And we don't know what sterility or triploidy in sweet gum means. Does it mean no balls?
Right.
No gum balls? Does it mean gum balls with no seed?
No kidding.
Does it mean abnormal gum balls that are soft and you can step on them and laugh?
Yeah.
Or just
That's what I would want.
That's what you'd want. So I'm hoping it's like Rotunduloba.
Yeah.
That makes these little aborted gum balls that drop off real quick.
Sure.
But we don't know yet. So that's to come.
No, that's interesting for sure.
But I had a great undergraduate student who was actually studying Rotunduloba reproductive physiology as a project, looking at male and female fertility in Rotunduloba. And what he found is Rotunduloba is actually male fertile. We can use it as a male.
Oh, wow.
And but it's female sterile. But he knew exactly when the abortion took place.
Okay.
He took pictures of the development of the fruit.
Yeah.
It was a really nice project. Andrew Scruggs was his name.
Interesting.
I think you'd find that it was a student project that was given at this research symposium probably in 2011.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wonder if that slender one could be of use to like the timber industry where they could grow timber trees like you grow corn really close together.
Yeah, I don't know if they've ever exploited that, but sweet gum is a important pulp plant, I think. I don't know if it still is. I'm not sure where it fits in the pulp industry now.
Okay.
But you could grow a plantation of slender silhouettes.
Sure.
You have a nice straight trunk.
Sure.
You take those lateral limbs off. Now the slender silhouette here in the parking lot, because it's shaded, it has a lot of competition. It's tending to splay quite a bit. It doesn't look real good.
Yeah.
Slender silhouette looks best when it's out in the open as a specimen tree.
So that might
that's the only
keep it from being a good.
That's the only downside. My daughter went to Houston last year, and she was in downtown Houston, and they were planting. She saw slender silhouettes in the health strip between the sidewalk and the road. The slender silhouettes, they're doing just great.
Sure.
Wow. In Houston of all places.
In Houston of all places. And JC has some great pictures in the archives of Houston, of the plant from the coast and the black swamps of North Carolina.
Tupelo?
Yeah, no, not Tupelo. I can't think of it. You know, it's the oldest tree on Earth, in North Carolina. You know,
Taxodium?
Taxodium.
Okay.
Taxodium grows well in those areas of Houston too.
Yeah, sure.
Because it tolerates compacted soils, low
Sure.
oxygen.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So sorry I got off on a
No,
tangent.
you're good.
Yeah,
And I
no.
led myself down a rabbit hole that I couldn't get out of.
That's okay. That's okay. Rabbits are cute sometimes.
Yeah, rabbits are very cute.
We are real low on time,
Okay.
but we can have as much. Is there anything else, Dennis, that you wanted to make sure we hit?
Well, I was going to talk about sweet gums, but yeah, you
We got it.
You
Yeah,
got
yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
We got it.
And the only other thing that, well, we could talk about butterfly bushes.
Sure, if you'd like to, I'm happy to. Yeah.
You're really well known for developing a line of dwarfs,
Right.
and some color breaks and the sterility, which is extremely important. If
Right.
you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Actually, butterfly bush, I started on about a year or two before the redbuds. And I recall going down to visit Tony Avent and walking around his garden. And he says, you know, if you work on redbuds, you ought to have another taxa that has a quicker turnaround time. So you're not looking at 10 to 12 years out before you release something. And you know, we got talking and we thought, well, dwarfness or compactness and buddleia would be great, because the only game in town for a dwarf buddleia at that time was one called White Ball that came out of the Netherlands, which had quite a few liabilities actually. So we started breeding red buddleia about 1999, and we used about 4 or 5 different species in our breeding program. So the genetic background of my releases is very complex. And
Was that intentional for sterility or
well,
just-
as it turned out, it wasn't intentional, but it was the basis for sterility.
Okay.
Okay. So in a way, I was breeding for compactness, but in choosing the strategy that I chose, we got sterility to come along for the ride,
Okay.
which was great. So we released a series of very dwarf forms. The original one was called Blue Chip, which we improved upon about 5 years later and called Blue Chip Junior, which is even smaller than the original Blue Chip. I still have the original Blue Chip plant at my house, now 20 years old, the original plant.
Is it still dwarf?
It's still dwarf, yeah. Doing
Excellent.
great. So we released a series, we called it Lilac Chip, Blue Chip. We got one really dwarf. We called it Pink Micro Chip, which we thought was a good name. And I have a pink Micro Chip in a pot at home. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's just this little muffin, pink flowers. You can't beat it. I don't know why it doesn't sell 2 million a year. Okay, so that was the chip series, and largely they are dwarf. The most sterile form of that series is a cultivar called Purple Haze. Purple Haze has been proven to be almost absolutely sterile in the Oregon trials, in my trials, any trial of buddleia. You can crush up 100 panicles of Purple Haze when they dry out, and you might get one seedling. So if anybody wants to grow a totally sterile buddleia, Purple Haze is your choice. But all
And if
the
you
other
live in the Pacific Northwest or the Northeast or England, buddleias can be a horrible weed.
correct, buddleias can be a horrible weed, and they can be a horrible weed in Europe and in the UK.
Yeah.
They grow in the ballast along the subway and railroad lines. Shows you what kind of habitat they like, that they grow in that gravel.
Yeah. They'll grow in a crack in a foundation of a house or up in the gutters. Yeah.
So what does that tell you about growing buddleia? Don't improve the soil too much, okay?
Sure.
People water them to death and love them to death, and then they come to me and say, why did my buddleia die? Because you spent too much time taking care of it. You loved it too much, you know? So that was that series. Then we had a series, then we had another goal of developing an intermediate height series. And those were the ones that came out of White Ball as a parent. We crossed White Ball with a number of different color variants. And in those F2s, we recovered not dwarfs, but something about in the 3 to 4 foot range. And The two most popular cultivars out of that have been Miss Ruby, which we named after Ruby McSwain, who was a big donor to the McSwain Center. So I'm happy that we were able to name that in her honor while she was still alive. And we named another one Miss Molly. It wasn't really named in honor of anybody. Some people thought it was named after Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wills, Good Golly, Miss Molly.
Okay.
Song. I'm from the 60s. You got to excuse me, okay? But Miss Molly has a unique, almost near red flower color, and no one has yet been able to duplicate that. Okay? And I'm not telling people what the cross is. If they want to go to the patent and find out, they can find out. But Miss Molly is beautiful. It's got a red flower color. Miss Ruby is more of a hot pink. And I told you the story about Miss Ruby, but we generally grew out about 5,000 F2s of Buddleia every year when we were really into Buddleia breeding. So we had usually about 2 acres of F2 seedlings growing out at high density. So we drove, my technician and I, my research assistant, Lane Snelling, who many of you probably know, we drove up in the van down at the research station next to that plot, and the Buddleia about that time were about in full bloom. We drove up, he looked out from the van, he looked out over that 2 acres and said, there it is, right there it is.
I love that.
That was Miss Ruby, okay? He could pick that plant out amongst 5,000 other plants. It was that hot of a variety. And Miss Molly was a couple years later, and we had the Spring Motor Nursery, the Proven Winners group, down looking at the plots. They picked out Miss Molly like it was a hot potato.
Yeah.
You know, that bright red, you know. So that was 2005, actually, when we were doing that. So those have been just as popular, or perhaps even more popular than the dwarfs.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect landscape size, 4 feet.
It sure is, yeah. And they're a little bit more robust. I will say that the dwarfs, they tend to be a little bit more demanding in terms of culture. They're a little bit more cold tender as you go further up into the northern areas of growing. The Miss series, we have 4 in that Miss series: Miss Molly, Miss Ruby, Miss Violet, and who had the candlestick in the dining room. You know, I can't think of the name for the white one. But I've learned long ago that whites don't seem to be very popular. They tend to fade pretty quick. But I hope this white dwarf redbud we have, because we have a Texensis form that's compact and white flowered, and because it's white flowered, there is absolutely no pigmentation at all in the foliage. It's pure green. There's no contamination of anthocyanins. It sticks out. It's so beautiful and so bold that I think you'll want to part with some cash when you see it.
I have one criticism of white flowered Cercis. The flowers aren't quite as delicious as the purple flowered ones. Really, that is something I noticed.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're well aware of that. I'm sure you're directing your plant breeding for more delicious flowers.
More delicious flowers and more nutritious and delicious.
Yeah,
I've never tried the white one. I've only tried the pink one.
They're different. They really are different. You really can taste the difference.
I bet you probably can, yeah.
But that does appear to be all the time that we have
for today.
That sounds good. So,
hey, this has been fun. Thank you so much.
It has been fun.
To you folks who are manning the camera there and taking notes. And Dennis, thank you for being a great interviewer. I had a good time.
This is amazing. Thank you, Denny, for not only thanking everybody here, but for being here on our program and blessing us with your knowledge and your fun stories. And thanks, Dennis, for first procuring Denny and bringing him in on short notice and getting us through this conversation. This has been a wonderful program.
Thank you.
But thank you, everybody, for being with us today on the midweek program. We will, of course, be back next week with a program as soon as I remember what it is. We'll be here with Tim. Tim's going to be doing his top plant picks. He's going to be doing the scented plants. Sense and sensibility. That is not a typo. It is a hilarious pun. So we hope we will see you all next week for that. Y'all take care.